One exit on the left and on the right. To the rear of the hall, there are two exits, one at the top of each aisle. Please be aware that your closest exit may be behind you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Warner. I'm very proud to be president of Rhode Island College, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight, and particularly to our flagship performing arts venue, Sappensley Hall at the Nazarian Center. We've hosted here countless music, theater, and dance events, as well as speakers like Holocaust survivor Eva Kor, the Providence Journal's Public Occurrences series, and even the Rhode Island Senate when COVID precautions prevented them from meeting at the State House. I want to thank our partners, the Providence Journal and the Public Radio, as well as all 5 candidates for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. Rhode Island College is proud to host this candidates forum. It is our duty and privilege as an anchor institution for the state to provide a place where the public can hear directly from the candidates for the highest office in Rhode Island. I also want to thank our moderators, Ian Donis of the Public's Radio, Patrick Anderson from the Projo, and our own student, Raymond Bakari, who is editor-in-chief of our student newspaper, The Anchor. I also want to extend our gratitude to the technical staff here at Rhode Island College for making the magic work tonight. Thank you all. As well as all the staff at the Public's Radio and the Projo who helped make this event happen. Finally, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. Informed, engaged citizens keep our democracy strong, and this kind of spirited public discourse is essential to the health of our state, our region, and our nation. Thank you all, and welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special live broadcast and digital stream of our Gubernatorial Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Public's Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. Rhode Island voters will decide the state's next governor when the current election ends November 8th. The 2 main candidates are study and contrast. Democratic Governor Dan McKee is a lifelong Rhode Islander who cut his teeth as the mayor of his native Cumberland. Republican challenger Ashley Kalis is a businesswoman and a newcomer to Rhode Island. This evening, in a forum co-sponsored by the Public's Radio and the Providence Journal, we'll explore many of the key issues facing the state and how the candidates propose to address them. In the first hour, we'll hear from the Democratic incumbent, Governor McKee, and his GOP challenger, Ashley Kalis. Later this evening, we'll be joined by the other candidates on the ballot for governor, 2 independents and a libertarian. We're coming to you before a live audience at Rhode Island College in Providence, and we're broadcasting on 89.3 FM. We're also streaming this event, which you can pick up on theprovidencejournal.com. I'm Ian Donis, political reporter for the Public's Radio. I'll be joined in asking the candidates questions by Patrick Anderson, State House reporter for the Providence Journal, and Raymond Bakari, a student journalist at Rhode Island College. Before we start, I want to ask our audience to remain quiet until the end of our forum when you can express your support for your preferred candidate. We also ask that you do not display signs during the forum. The focus here is on the candidates, what they have to say, and it will cut into their time if there are distractions. Candidates, we're looking for a lively discussion. There are no strict time limits, but we have a lot of ground to cover, and we will interrupt you if you go off track and do not answer the question. So let's dive right in. Education is arguably the most important economic issue facing Rhode Island. Despite that, the state has mostly spun its wheels on improving public schools for more than 20 years. Today, there was just another report by the Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council underscoring the crisis in public education. Mr. McKee, we've heard you talk about how education has been a hallmark in your life. Ms. Kalis, we've heard you say how you want to be the education governor. There's no need to repeat that right now. Instead, tell me, what specific steps will you take to ensure that we're not in the same situation 4 years from now? Let's start with Mr. McKee.
Yeah, so first, thanks to Rhode Island College and President Warner for hosting us here tonight. But yeah, you can't just start from that question and you have to go back in terms of let's talk about my experience. No one No one's ever sat in my office with the experience I have and the success I've had in terms of closing learning gaps. No governor that's in the country, I don't believe, that's opened up as many regional public schools as I have, responsible for. Just give you a sense on the success of those schools and why I know that moving forward, working with all the parties, we're going to make some significant progress in the state. 3 out of the 10 top elementary schools, middle schools in the state of Rhode Island are schools that I started. 3 of the 15 top elementary schools in the state of Rhode Island are schools that I started. Every one of them, they're the only ones on that list with more than a 50 or 60% free and reduced lunch. Just to give you an example on the RICAS scores alone, the last time we actually had RICAS before the COVID. On the ELA, those schools outperformed the state by 10 points. On the math, they outperformed the state by 19 points.
Let me stop you there, Mr. McKee, if I could, because the question really, I understand you're saying you have a record.
No, I don't think you, Ian, I think it's what I bring to the table.
Okay.
And the history. I just will go one more stat, and I'll be happy to explain how we're going to move forward and why we're not going to reset the wheel. Just on the peers alone, plus 20 on the ELA in those schools, plus 26 on the math scores. So I know that the students in this state can achieve. And I've had the experience to understand how to make it happen. So now, unfortunately, 2 years of COVID have made a difference because we made safety the top priority of our students in the state during that time frame, vaccinating every teacher, every worker, making sure we had masking policies. Now we got that open, we're in that spot where the commissioner has got a plan in place. We have been working on that. The plan is in education to invest about $500 million in the schools in the state of Rhode Island. $300 million on our public schools, $200 million on the universities, state universities, and those dollars are going to go right into this campus. Besides that, we have made sure that there's curriculum-based strategies that I'm sure that the commissioner is a lot more prepared to talk to than I am, but I meet twice a week with the commissioner and the superintendent of schools in Providence. I am very confident that what I've been able to do, which is nationally recognized, we're going to be able to transfer that into our schools, and I'm very confident that's going to happen.
Ms. Kalis, you heard Mr. McKee say he has a record of success in Cumberland, and the pandemic has put things on hold.
Not just Cumberland. This is a regional schools in the state, in Providence, North Providence, Cumberland, Lincoln, Pawtucket, Central Falls.
We now have a national record of trapping children in failing schools. That's what we have. And why would we trust you now when you failed a generation of children that have been trapped in failing schools, and you can't even ensure that children are able to get to school on buses? That is what has been happening in the last few weeks. And I'll answer the question, but I don't think we can trust somebody who has failed a generation of children.
Well, that's not quite an answer, but the...
I will actually substantively answer it with policy. In the short term,
Ms. Kalis, what will you do differently?
Yes, in the short term, we cannot trap children in failing schools, which means that we need a mechanism of public school choice. So if your child is trapped in a failing school, you will be able to select a public school of your choice while we do the long-term work of education reform. The information in the RIPEC report that was cited is very similar to the steps that I laid out in my education plan. They almost match, and I'll go over what those are. We need to have high standards, which means that we need to end of the year high stakes testing and move to progress-based testing. We need to have accountability. We need to support our teachers by having high-quality professional development. We need to pay our teachers more. We're not regionally competitive, and we have a hiring gap, which is in the RIPEC report as well. So we need to do that. There's more. We need to level the playing field, which means universal pre-K, and it also means a reform of the school funding formula, because that formula is not equitable, it is not fair, and it disproportionately impacts English as second language students and students in special education. So we need to fix that.
Mr. McKee, 30 seconds.
I'm not even done. I'm not done yet.
I would love to spend the whole hour on this because we don't spend enough time on it. And it would take me well over an hour to explain exactly what we've been doing and getting done. The funding formula, I commissioned that report, 2009. Before then, 80% of the school districts in the state of Rhode Island were underfunded. There were things that I put into that report in 2009 that are not done. We'll get to that. But we did do a lot by making it a fund the student. Actually, I assigned people to RIDE to get that done. As far as so reports have been added for this period of time. we've been successful. I have thousands of kids in schools that are performing at significantly higher rates than other schools in the state of Rhode Island.
All right.
And that's very transferable. The difference now is that we're going to do it with the districts in a way where tomorrow I'll have a meeting on higher
I
ed.
mean, I
in
would
my office.
hardly call.
Hang on, Ms. Kalis.
Yes.
We're going to move on.
Ms. Kalis, both of you say that you support school choice, but that can mean a lot of things. So starting with Ms. Kalis,
Yes.
how specifically would your plan work? If I'm a parent in Providence, will you guarantee that I could send my child to Barrington or East Greenwich? Could I go for free to a private school under your plan?
Yes, so that's a great question. And in some instances, if you're a parent in Providence, you might be able to send your child outside of the county, which is what you're asking. School choice is something that people get afraid about because it's different, but it's been done around the country successfully, and there are a variety of different models. What I'm looking at is public school choice. So if your child is trapped in a failing or unsuitable school, you'll be able to pick a school of your choice. And it starts within the district, and if there are seats available, you can move your child. And there will be transportation provided, because if you don't provide transportation, it's not really access. Then we'll move within the county, and then we will move broader than that on a case-by-case basis.
Is this a lottery that determines who gets
So
one of these seats?
The lottery is really a problem. Right now, we have a waiting list for charter school students, and that is really picking winners and losers, and it is almost like winning the lottery with your education. That needs to stop. So we need more choice. That was also in the RIC report as well. So the reality is that I refuse to tell a 5-year-old that is in a failing school that they need to wait for 8 years until we do the long-term work of education reform. And we must find a way. And there are multiple models, and this has been done around the country. This is not something new, public school choice. What is unacceptable is the civil rights violations that we have in not providing equal access to education in this state, specifically in Providence and Central Falls and Woonsocket. We need to correct this, so we will figure out how to do it. There are models that work, but the excuses of it's too complicated, it's not too complicated. It just takes political will. And saying that you did something, you still haven't succeeded, Governor. It is still not there. What has happened with the funding formula is level funded. There was progress made, but it is not enough.
Mr. McKee, what do you say to that plan? Would that plan work?
Well, first of all, let's answer the question. I am for public schools. I've answered this question many times. I'm using, we use the Merrill Academy as a vehicle to prove out that, kids that are coming from challenged families could outperform their peers by 20 points and 26 points. We're not talking about an experiment here. We have thousands of kids in these schools in the state of Rhode Island.
So you agree with me, you're for
Thousands
public
of-
school choice then now?
Well, you're following my lead, Ms.
Oh, great, so now we are going to have public school choice even no matter who's elected. So that helps that 5-year-old. So I hope you will commit to
Well,
doing
first
that
of all,
now. Let us help that 5-year-old who is trapped in a failing school.
Can I answer the
Ms.
question?
Kalis, would you let Mr. McKee
Yeah, I mean,
answer?
that was about a few minutes. I got about 20 seconds in so far. So the issue here is about education and not resetting the wheel right now. We're a few years into a process. For instance, 4 years ago, we aligned our testing with the MCASs. That was a really good thing to do, and I support testing. I support long-term testing because you need to know where you got to go, where you are and where you're going to go. So when we did that, to reinvent the wheel right now, that's what we do every single time there's a change of leadership. We're not going to do that. The commissioner has a good plan. We're going to follow it. She's in districts, resetting curriculum, setting standards that we have not had before, and we are going to achieve at levels because of that. If we reverse it and go backwards, we're just back to square one. It's another fake hustle effort. I'm not going to go fake hustle. I'm going to improve the schools
So
in the
you are
state of Rhode
for
Island.
public school choice, so you agree
Well,
with me?
if you were from around here, you would know that I actually...
Please,
you would
please,
actually know
please.
that I established...
Governor, what I know...
Okay, we're gonna
first of all,
We're gonna move on here.
Look, I've been
Governor, what
nationally
I know-
recognized on choice.
Well,
so-
then I am trying to ask you to make a policy decision, and you're seeming like you're for school choice, but you're not. So
Okay,
are you or are you
Mr.
not?
McKee, 30 seconds.
What he just was, okay.
Do you support what Ms. Kalis proposed, yes or no?
Let me tell you, I already started off my comments. I've done more regionalization in
But
public
you're
schools
not, can you
than
answer
anyone.
that question?
We're going to keep on doing the work that I've done because
is that
it's
a
work.
yes or a no?
And regionalization and strategies is part of it because I've already done it.
Right now, the quality of your
15 years of
education is
experience
determined
on
by
that.
your zip code. I
Ms.
need to be
Kalis
able to
has
speak.
no experience
This is-
on this.
The quality of your education right now is determined by your zip code. That is unacceptable. Some cities and towns have school choice and others do not.
In the
You
school that I
cannot-
started, has Providence, Central Falls, Pawtucket, Cumberland, and Lincoln mixed on income.
What is your
and they're doing
policy?
very, very
Okay,
well.
let's not talk over one another because then the audience can't hear either one of
Okay.
you. Let's go to a question from Raymond Bakari.
Let's cool things down a bit. Thank you, Ian. Since this debate is taking place at Rhode Island College, let's discuss where you both stand on supporting public institutions of higher learning, specifically as we're facing issues such as declining enrollment. Starting with you, Mr. McKee, how would you address that?
Well, like I said, President Warner is going to do a good job rethinking Rhode Island College, and we're going to invest in our schools. Got 170, almost $200 million into facilities into the budget right now on a Bay campus at URI. Work that's being done here at Rhode Island College, work that's being done at CCRI. I am going to invest in our state universities like they've never been invested before because this is where our economy is going to come from. And we want to make sure that the schools that we operate on a state level prepare kids for good paying jobs.
How would that affect the enrollment numbers?
Well, if people know they're coming to a school that's going to get good paying jobs, they're going to enroll. And we're already seeing progress here at Rhode Island College. I know that the numbers are up just on the work that has been done in the last few months. So we know that we have this great institution here at Rhode Island College. You invest in facilities, facilities matter. You invest in curriculum, and you invest in curriculum that matters. For instance, here at Rhode Island College, what we're working on right now is a housing transition so that young kids that graduate as teachers or nurses, they'll have a transition right on campus for affordable housing, and then those teachers are going to be able to teach in Providence and fill our healthcare needs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McKee.
Yes,
Ms. Kalis, we're going to go.
the higher ed is a big deal to me.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in using public funds for public goods, which are public universities. So we can agree on that instead of spending public money towards private projects like a soccer stadium for a private interest or putting money into building luxury apartments. So in terms of public universities, I actually went to a public land-grant university, University of Massachusetts, which is a land-grant institution. And we must incentivize enrollment in public universities. One way that we can do it is we can find a way to reduce the cost of borrowing if you go to a public university. That could be the role of the state because we're incentivizing a certain level of behavior. So yes, we need to invest in our universities. We're under-investigated in higher ed, but we also can find ways to encourage students to choose public universities as an option.
So let me just also say my record here is really strong, okay? So not only did I make College Promise permanent for our community college, but also we're working here with the president on a scholarship strategy that actually is going to close some of the gaps on cost for the junior and the seniors here, because one of the things that has hurt enrollment here is the promise. So we got to find some replacement for that that actually makes sure that our Rhode Island College is competitive.
Just a quick follow-up, because the enrollment is just one of many topics we could talk about when it comes to the topic of higher education. Rhode Islanders are struggling with the burden of college debt. That number of people who are suffering with that debt is very high. I'll stick with you, Mr.
Well, the
McKee.
College Promise
What would you do
makes
to
the College
help Rhode
Promise
Islanders?
provides every student in the state of Rhode Island with a free 2-year credits to move towards a junior and senior of college. So that's something that I think that we all can be very proud of, and I was proud to continue that and make that permanent. I think that we continue to find ways to help where the need where the need is. That's why I was just saying we're going to create a program here at Rhode Island College, and I'm going to fund it in the budget. We're going to also ask the alumni and the endowment to help support it. But we're going to support students here because we need to educate our students here right in the state, and then we need to provide them a path to good jobs.
Ms. Kalis?
Can you ask me the question again? I was
Sure
just sort
thing.
of wondering
What would
that
you
went.
do
Yeah.
to help Rhode Islanders who are struggling with the burden of college debt?
Yeah, I know what that's like. I didn't come from anything. My husband is also the son of a Holocaust survivor, and we had $250,000 of student debt, and that felt crushing. It was a house to us. And we made different decisions in life because of the level of student debt that we had. I didn't have as much opportunity. My friends who had parents that could pay for their college, they could choose any job they wanted. Where I was always worried about choosing a job that would make sure that I could pay my student loans, and it just changes your perspective. It changes what your options are in life. So there are different things that we can do. We can incentivize public universities. We can also increase programs like dual enrollment, which is what I participated in high school, where you can take college classes during high school, and by the time you're done, you can end up with an associate's degree that then you can take with you and then turn it into a bachelor's degree. That reduces the cost of student loans. There are different things that we can do in that vein that will help.
Would you favor extending the Rhode Island Promise to the last 2 years?
Oh, yes, I absolutely. I am in favor. We do agree. I am in favor of extending that program. I also want to say that we need to invest in technical and professional training schools, and we need to value the trades and professional careers the same way that we value college. Because somehow we've said that one is more, and I was a generation where my parents thought that if somehow I didn't go to four-year university, they had failed me. And that is a narrative that must stop, because going into the trades or a professional career is just as valuable. And if we offer that opportunity in high school, like a high school like Davies, where it's academic excellence and real world training, where students leave with high-paying jobs, that will help reduce the burden of student debt, because those children go straight into the workforce and they have great careers. That is a great option.
Thank you, Ms. Kalis.
I'd love to stay on this for an hour, but we already have we have kids that are in high school right now, attending CCRI and other universities.
We need more.
All right, thank you
Okay,
both.
thank you.
Ian?
Yes. Ms. Kalis, when we talk about the economy in Rhode Island, it's sometimes hard to tell whether the glass is half empty or half full. Your opponent talks about how unemployment in the state is at a historic low, but at the same time, the Federal Reserve of St. Louis reports that total non-farm employment hit a peak in February 2020 that has not been seen since. Yes, small business is vitally important here, but what would you do to create well-defined engines of job growth?
So first, I want to address the claim that everything is just fine here. I was talking to a business owner, and he had to shut down one of his shops because he couldn't find employees to work there, and it wasn't unsuccessful. He just couldn't staff it. And families are struggling. I know what it's like. I have been through a period where I had so many bills that I had a stack and I didn't open them because I couldn't pay them. So, like, what was the point anyway? And it is not easy right now. When I talk to people from around the state, what I hear is it is just so hard to make it. So when you hear the governor say everything is great and everything is fine, I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you. You are not alone. Rhode Islanders are struggling in this economy, and it is getting harder to make it. The idea that he says everything is fine while a lot of people are struggling, it leaves them alone in terms of what they are experiencing in the economy. We have a crisis right now, a crisis in affordability. So what we need to do is a few things. In the short term, we need to provide immediate relief. That comes in the form, and a very simple thing that I gave the governor is we had an electricity rate hike. A way to provide immediate relief, which deals with a regressive impact, is to suspend the hike on electricity to provide some immediate relief. That is within the governor's powers. So he should do that. That helps.
The governor's office says this would lead to protracted litigation.
I mean, that's not true. We provided the documentation for him. I suggest that he read it, and that the case is very clear. So,
Mr. McKee?
Well, first of all, that statute was not passed for pricing. It was passed for supply during, which I remember, which certainly struggled.
it
many
was
times.
passed for a supply disruption, which is exactly what we have.
Ms. Kalis, let him
okay.
answer, please.
So, and hey, a governor does not have the ability to just walk in and do anything they want, right? So, and there is implications. First of all, the statute was not designed for that. It was for supply. It was very clear of what it was for, right? So we are going to do what we're doing, which is providing $100 million or more of relief right now. We're lowering energy costs for those who are most at risk, the $39,000, over $5.3 million. $32 million is going to go broadly out to all the ratepayers in the state of Rhode Island. 4% of the tax that's on there is going to be relieved for months during the winter session. So we are doing what we should be doing. We're not going to get involved in a wild goose chase that bears no merit. And we're not going to be chasing this thing for months when we got the problem with us right now.
Mr. McKee, have you cherry-picked data to portray an overly rosy picture of Rhode Island's economy?
No, absolutely not.
Can I answer the question
Absolutely not.
related to the
Absolutely not.
lectures?
I'm
I mean,
happy
he's
to
just
answer
not,
that
he's not
question.
telling
I'm
the
happy to
truth.
answer
Hang
that
on for
question.
one second. Mr. McKee?
Yeah, so no. Look, if it's raining, I'm going to tell you it's raining. But when the sun's shining, I'm going to tell you the sun's shining. If we had the highest unemployment rate in the history of the state of Rhode Island, that would be repeated every single day. We have the lowest unemployment rate right now.
But does that really tell the whole story?
Let's talk about this. If we had the slowest improving economy coming out of a pandemic, that would be mentioned every single day. We have the fastest growing recovering economy in the Northeast, and we have the second in the country.
Ms. Kalis, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd like to read some statistics. We're the 45th worst state in the country to do business in. We're the 42nd in terms of the highest cost of living. We have the 41st worst overall economy. We are the 44th least affordable place for seniors to retire. We are the 45th in terms of property tax burden. We are the 49th in terms of GDP growth. Not everything is not fine. Rhode Island has a history of being first in and last out of a recession. And I will tell you, do not listen to what he is saying if you are struggling, because you are not alone.
Let me tell you, we are not first in and last out of this economic downturn. It took 6 years to get out of that when the real estate crisis came. During my administration, we are leading the Northeast. We're not the first in and last out. And the investments that we're making in the budget and investing in the largest surplus that the state has ever had in universities, in offshore wind, in projects in Pawtucket, in projects in Providence, in projects in Quonset, in projects in the fisheries down in Galilee. This is going to provide jobs. And the best remedy to an economy is providing good paying jobs. Because where do those people who have the jobs spend buy their pizzas? Right with the local businesses. I'm a local small business. I struggled through the banking crisis dramatically. I understand what it's like to potentially lose your home. I understand what it's like to have people who work for you not have a job. I've struggled it through the internet bubble as well, and I struggled it during the
Speak on the economy,
Yes,
but a different
this is-
subject.
oh.
Ms. Kalis, you mentioned the Pawtucket Soccer Stadium. We're clear
Right.
that you do not support the current deal to build and finance that project. But if you were elected, you would take office, and the project would already be partially underway. At that point, would you attempt to cut the project off and try to prevent any state funding and risk potentially
like
a hole
to-
in the ground, or would you go ahead with a project you don't support?
So, high level, I hear a lot of him saying that he's giving money, and that is something that career politicians do. They just give your taxpayer dollars away. What I don't hear a lot of is looking for a return on investment. What are we getting back? And what are we investing in terms of the future of the state? The soccer stadium is using public money for a private good, a private project that will not result in something that everybody in the state can use. Workers should be building things with their hands with public money that their children can use in the future, not for private businesses. And when we move forward with this, let's say the stadium happens, I would hope that it would align more with what originally the stadium was supposed to do.
Well, you could play, if you were elected, what would you do? You take over in January, construction is underway, would you tell them, no, we're not giving you public dollars, or would you go ahead with it?
Is construction, you think it'll be underway in January?
Let's say
I've been
it is.
in a
Let's
lot
say
of
it is.
construction
Let's
projects
say it
in
is.
my
Let's
life
say it
in
is.
private business. It never really works out that way.
Let's say
I think
it
it
is.
depends on what it is, and I think that the reality is that this was a dirty backroom deal, and that should not be rewarded, and it's your taxpayer dollars. I mean, if you're I can support, and that's not me, actually, that's not me saying it. That's your own Commerce Board member saying it. That's not me. I can read you what Mike McNally said about it if you'd like to hear what they said about this deal.
Let's let the governor defend the
Yeah,
project.
so we're talking about policy here, and if you want to, bring it down to a level of accusations, then go right ahead. Bring it down to the mud if you want. What we're doing in the state of Rhode Island right now is we're investing in the future. So what we're doing in Pawtucket, which is going to have housing, it's going to have retail, it's going to have a bridge that's going to connect just like the city of Providence, is going to be good for the jobs at the moment and long-term growth around the Pawtucket area. I'm not turning my back on the city of Pawtucket, but it's more than that, and I've just described it. It's investing in the fisheries, in Galilee, millions of public dollars. Who's going to benefit from that? The businesses. It's millions of dollars being invested in Quonset right now. Millions of dollars in downtown Providence in the Superman building to put the lights on there, and 1,300 people are going to work there. We're doing the same thing in Johnston with Amazon. 1,200 jobs are going to be realized. 800 jobs in Fidelity right now. We are investing dollars today that are going to pay dividends in the future. That's a policy issue, and if you don't believe it, then you're going to find out, because we're going to make it happen as I'm governor.
Mike McNally, I'd like to read this to respond, because we were talking about the soccer stadium. So what he said is, I can confirm that McKee's statement that Tidewater has more protections than any other commerce deal is absolutely false. It has maybe, I have to get this right, because it's a quote, the least protections. For anyone interested, I can provide details. There is no protection against excessive profit. Typical commerce deals have a profit waterfall provision which pays the state back. Tidewater also has no protections should fortuitous fail after the stadium opens. We were also never told who the investors are.
We've got the gist of it.
And let's remember the source on that somebody was working for my opponent in the last campaign. No public dollars are going to be put into that project.
This is a respected business leader.
Until it's complete.
He said,
no public dollars. And there are provisions for 30-year types of occupancy there that make sure the soccer program is there. Kalis. And there are penalties associated with that. And when we're done with the, making sure the provisions are there, this is something the city of Pawtucket wanted. They're putting $10 million of their dollars into that project because they believe in it. We're completing a train station in Pawtucket right now. Good growth is happening, retail growth, good investment is being made. The same thing's going to happen here, but we're going to duplicate it in multiple locations around the state. That's what the Rhode Island 2030 plan is about. Pick it up, read it. It's a plan, and it's a long-term 10-year plan for the state of Rhode Island.
Okay, we're moving on. You're listening to our 2022 Gubernatorial Candidates Forum hosted by the Public's Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. We're broadcasting live from Rhode Island College on 89.3 FM and streaming through the Providence Journal. We asked Rhode Islanders to submit questions for the candidates. Here's one of the many questions we got from Greg Jarrett.
Hello, my name is Greg Garrett. I live in Providence, and this is my question for the people running for governor of Rhode Island. Specifically, in regards to cars and the production of electricity, what concrete proposals are you supporting to end the use of fossil fuels in Rhode Island by 2035? Hello,
Mr. McKee, could you hear that okay?
Garrett.
Yeah, I did. It's a good question. While I'm at it, he
for
mentioned
people
cars. Let's say we also eliminated the car tax for every Rhode Islander and every small business in the state of Rhode Island in my spare time. So the other thing on that, what he's talking about is an important thing. We have made a commitment to clean energy. I've put in legislation that's going to create 1,000 kilowatts of energy offshore, going to electrify 450,000 homes. I think it's over $25 million into charging stations that are already underway. We put incentives in to purchase electric vehicles as well. We are going to lead the country. I signed legislation by 2033 that we will be 100% on renewable energy relative to utilities and our energy costs, as well as signed an act on climate that's going to set guidelines for 2030, 40, and 50 to make sure we're reducing the carbon gas, which is exactly what that question was about, reducing carbon gas through electrifying vehicles, as well as I would say that we're also investing in millions of dollars in electrified buses. I took one of them to the beach on Beach Day a few months back, about a month and a half back. So we are doing the work. That's the record. That's the record that my opponent denies.
Ms. Kalis, your response to the same question.
So I think that we can all agree that it's our obligation to protect the future of the state and the world. And how we get there is very important, because if we don't take the correct steps in the correct order and we don't have a plan that can actually be executed, we're not going to get anywhere. And we really need to invest in our infrastructure. We can learn from what works, but we can also learn from places where there have been problems. So what I would not like to happen is to try to have everybody move to electric cars and then not have the grid to support it. So I would invest in grid storage. I would invest in the hard infrastructure around that. We would create, you can do like small areas that, like a hospital complex that has a smaller grid as well that is self-contained. So in order for us to be successful in moving to an electric or the technology of the future, we need to have the underlying infrastructure to support it, because if we don't and we try to move too quickly, it'll fail and people will give up too early. So we need to do the hard work.
Please refrain from clapping. It's only taking time away from your candidate.
It's not glamorous work. Grid storage, who wants to talk about grid storage? But it's really important. It's really important infrastructure work. And we got to do it, because I want to believe that we will have a cleaner environment for our kids and that we will be able to protect the future.
We have another
Yes.
community question. This is from Angie Gonzalez.
Hi, my name is Angie Gonzalez,
Hello,
and I reside in Providence, Rhode Island. And my question for the candidate is, how will you be more integrated in the urban communities?
My name is Angie Gonzalez, and
how will you
I
be able to
reside in
support
Providence, Rhode Island. And my question for
All right,
the candidate is, how will you
already
be
have a
more
reputation
integrated
for
in the
being everywhere.
urban communities?
I think being
And,
present is
how will
important.
you be able to
And
support them?
trying to be available is something that I will commit to do. It's not just about running a campaign, it's about actually caring about being in the community. So I will continue to do that and not prioritize one community after the other. Also, ensuring that we deal with the issues of different communities is something that you'll get. When I hear about Providence, I think about the school systems. And I think about the hard work that we need to do, especially because there is a disparate impact in terms of our failure to fix that school system on Black and brown communities. And we need to address it. And you need a governor who's willing to do the hard work, get involved. Being the governor of Rhode Island is not like being the governor of California when the governor says, I'm going to plan to have a plan. If the buses aren't working when I am governor and kids cannot get to school, I will be involved. That is the opportunity of being a governor of a small state, is you get to get involved in the solutions to the problems. So that is what you will see with me, is a governor that really wants to know the details, is interested in the policy work, and will also be there to demand solutions to problems. Not hope that when kids can't get to school with the ripped busing crisis, hope that that agency has a plan to have a plan. That is what we've seen from the governor. And again, we are having issues getting kids to school. This is a state where you can solve that problem. We're not talking about California.
Mr. McKee,
I'd love to answer the young lady's question. About time, we actually had a question in these forums about equity. About time. About time. And what I've done, the four things that the young lady was talking about, what we're going to do with the community in Providence, which is a heavily minority community. About time we talked about that. You know, well before I was a governor, I was a coach, coached boys and girls, all different age groups, all different economics, and learned a lot. And I've transferred that to my work. So what I did not only was help in getting shots in the arms, first in the country, by the way, can't deny that. Opening the economy, first in the Northeast, can't deny that. Lower the unemployment, best in the state's history, yes. But the fourth piece is equity. And that's what we're working on every single day. On the equity, this is an important point, because that's what the question was about. So on the equity, we've restaffed our Office for Equity and Diversity, which is supposed to be giving at least 10% of the state contracts to minority-owned and women-owned businesses. It's never been done. We've already cracked the ceiling. It's at 16%. 16%. There's people who are watching this at home. That's important to them, because there's 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island. I say it once, I've said it 150, maybe 500 times. And each community that makes up those communities are important. That's why there's a flag for every community in the State House in the Rotunda, because I believe that's true. And every single community that makes up our communities, my goal is to raise their incomes. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Briefly.
He may have missed the point. I was talking about equity. There was a disparate impact in terms of who was able to get to school and not, and what community was impacted by that. Also, do not expect to get credit. You should not get extra credit for making sure that we fulfill our minority and women contracting obligations, well, that is simply the law. You don't get extra credit for following the law. That is the law.
Well, it's the first time it's ever happened. It's the first time that's ever happened. It's the first time this happened to happen, and that's the record.
You've been in government for a long
I'm so
time.
happy we're able to
Let's
talk
hold it
about
there.
tonight.
Let's hold it
For those
there.
who are listening at home, more so than what I'm hearing in the audience right
Mr.
now.
McKee.
But that's the record. That's
You've
the
been in
record.
government a long
It's a record
time.
of
Hang on.
achievement, and we've got a long way to go, but we're going to get
I'm
there.
going to stop you there. We've got a lot of issues in limited time. We're going to go to a lightning round of questions. Looking for a very brief yes or no answer, do you support undoing the Carcieri-era tax cut for the richest Rhode Islanders? Mr. McKee.
I don't intend to touch any of the taxes right now. We're running the largest surpluses we've ever had. This is the time to invest in our economy, and that's the way that we're going to make sure we grow it. If there's a need at some point in time, we'll do it. But at this point in time, there's no need to tax anybody.
My economic plan suggests that we cut taxes for those making under $150,000 a year and have no
Okay, that's
taxes
not
for
what I
those that are
asked about.
50. It is, if you look at my plan, it is actually a much more progressive plan because I get rid of taxes for people making under $50,000 a year, which helps those on fixed incomes. And I also look at another regressive tax, which is the sales tax. So my tax plan and structure is actually far more progressive in terms of what it does and who it helps. So I am in favor of giving relief to Rhode Islanders who have been hurt the most by the 10% tax that has been imposed on us by inflation. I want to provide immediate relief.
Voters in Massachusetts this year will vote on whether undocumented immigrants should be able to get a legal driving credential. Should Rhode Islanders get a vote on that, Ms. Kalis?
This law, should they get a vote on the ability for, well, I mean, I think that this is a law. In Massachusetts, Governor Baker came up with a proposal to do this. And his proposal made sure that as long as there was proper consulate documentation and the permit didn't look like a license that could be mistaken for voting, it was fine.
Mr. McKee?
We've already done it.
Yeah, that's been done.
So we've already passed that, and I was the one who made sure that it got over the finish line. Because the reason you want it, it's an economic issue.
Were you asking another question?
It gets people to jobs. It gets young people and their families to school, and it gets them to the local supermarket to make sure that they can purchase
Okay,
their
it's called a
food.
lightning round, Mr. McKee. Thank you. Please,
That's fair.
Please finish this sentence. The biggest factor holding Rhode Island back from achieving its economic potential, Mr. McKee, is what?
Right now, we're moving in that direction in a very solid way. I think what we need to do is to have a plan, follow that plan, the Rhode Island 2030 plan, by the way, that was put together on national renowned economics and economists.
Thank you.
It is, so yes, follow the 2030 plan. That's the answer. Housing, health, education, transportation, infrastructure, it's all in that plan.
Thank you, Ms. Kalis.
You want to start the sentence again because that was a long run-on.
Sure. The question is the single biggest factor holding back Rhode Island from achieving its economic potential is?
We are not competitive and we need new leadership.
A few more yes or no here. This is lightning round. Yes or no? Should Rhode Island Public Schools provide free lunch to all students? Yes or no?
Can I start?
Yes, Ms. Kalis. Mr. McKee.
Yeah, that option should be provided.
Should the DMV censor license plates it feels are in bad taste? Yes or no? Mr. McKee.
Well, I think that's a legal question. I think that takes more than a yes or no. So
Well, what do you think?
I don't particularly like license plates that might have vulgar language on them, so we'll try to figure out how to make that, make sure that doesn't happen.
Ms. Kalis.
I'm
not good
generally
for our
not
kids
for
to see that, is it?
censorship. So and also who decides what is good taste and what is bad is sort of subjective. As long as it's not vulgar, I would say we should not censor anything.
Should RIPTA be free to ride? Yes or no?
I couldn't hear
Mr.
you.
McKee, I believe Ms. Kalis.
I couldn't hear you.
Should RIPTA buses be free to ride?
I think for seniors, yes.
How about for everyone?
Probably not for everybody, but we should make sure that the rates are affordable so that we provide a public transportation that allows for
no?
accessing opportunity.
Mr. McKee.
In certain areas, I think it should be, especially in some of the urban areas. We're doing that in Central Falls right now. We're doing it in other communities. So I think that there's a value to make sure that you adjust it based on the circumstances, and that's what we're doing.
Mr. McKee, do you support or oppose line item veto power for the governor?
I
Support or
support it.
oppose?
I support it.
Ms. Kalis?
Support it.
Sticking with you, Ms. Kalis, do you support term limits for members of the General Assembly, and if yes, how many?
Yes, I'm not sure how many terms we would do. Maybe after a few terms, I think it's time for you to do something else.
So no specific number?
No specific number yet.
Mr. McKee?
I think that you're seeing that on the municipal level with their councils right now. I think that
It's a yes or no question.
Well, it depends on what the yes and no is, right? I don't know
Yes
how
or no
long it
for
is.
term limits for members of the General Assembly, yes or no?
Definitely should look into it, yes.
Yes?
Should look into it, yes. I don't know how many, is it 5 years, 10 years,
We don't know.
20
We
years?
haven't. We both agree. We don't know how long.
So yes, I think it's worth looking into.
Mr. McKee, like a lot of Democrats, you're focusing a lot of attention on the abortion issue. But back in 2018, in an interview with the Public's Radio, you questioned the need for a state-based abortion law, and you didn't think the Supreme Court was going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Was it naive to hold that view?
No, I always supported it. I didn't believe what happened this summer, and that happened through the Republican Party, Donald Trump, and along with Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett.
But you questioned the need for this back in 2018.
By July of 2018, I had put a press release on right after Kavanaugh got appointed to say, there's a red flag here and we need to be concerned about it. And that did happen. And so, yes, that issue is an important issue because I am pro-choice. My opponent is no choice.
Ms. Kalis,
not true,
Hang on,
but,
Ms. Kalis.
yeah.
We've heard you say, you describe yourself as pro-life. You oppose extending abortion coverage to women on Medicaid and the state employee health plan. You've talked about how you had difficult pregnancies,
Yes.
and that undergirds your view. But does this show that even in Rhode Island, a state with its own law protecting abortion rights, that it's poor women who will bear the brunt of the movement against abortion rights in the United States?
I am going to make sure that I am perfectly clear. The right to an abortion was codified in state law in 2019. I believe that the people spoke through their elected officials.
Okay, that's really not the question.
I'm answering it. Stick with me. But like a majority of Rhode Islanders, I do not support late-term or publicly funded abortions. And when we talk about my feelings and being pro-life, I've said that I am pro-life because of my personal experience with my children. However, the conflation of my ability, which is happening by Dan McKee, of my ability to uphold the law while I have a personal opinion as a woman is insulting.
Let's
and
talk about my question, not about Mr. McKee. The question is whether poor women in Rhode Island, not everyone can afford medical care. Will poor women bear the brunt if this abortion coverage is not extended to them?
Poor women are bearing the brunt of a foster system that is broken, by an education system that is broken. If you want to talk about equity and health equity, we should talk about a broader systemic failure by his administration. And so we can't have equity in one way and not in another when we talk about medical equity. But
Let's be clear, the EACA, Ms. Kalis, is going to veto that budget. She does not support it for the women that are on Medicaid and also state workers.
Mr. McKee, let me just offer a brief follow-up. There's doubt about whether there will be enough votes in the House of Representatives to pass the EACA. What will you do if that vote does not move forward in the House?
I don't have any doubts on that.
You don't?
Just like the gun legislation that I stepped in and asked the Speaker and the Senate President to get that to my desk, and we worked on that, and it was good legislation.
That's enough.
And it's keeping people safer in the state of Rhode Island. So just like that, I believe that that is going to happen, and I believe that I'm going to be working with the Senate President and the Speaker in a way that is very collaborative, and I believe that that bill will get to my desk.
I'm going to ask each of you about something that hasn't quite gone the way you had hoped or planned. Starting with Mr. McKee, the truck toll lawsuit was successful. Court ruled it was unconstitutional. You have decided to appeal. Is that throwing good money after bad and wasting taxpayer dollars that should just be written off at this point?
No, it's not. Right now, I think that it's the prudent thing to do is to appeal that. And as we build the case, which I believe we do have one, then we'll see where it brings us. But also, I want to make that very clear as you're talking about this, right? We are not going to tax cars. We're not going to toll cars. And we're not going to toll any additional trucks. So on the merit of what was passed in the General Assembly, we'll argue that, and then we'll determine where we go from there. I will reopen the budget this year with the $30 million of lost revenue and ask the General Assembly to fill that with the surplus, the excess surplus dollars that came in at $200 million, by the way, to make sure we keep our infrastructure going. $91 million in roads are going. This is important to your question, why you would pursue it, right? $500 million in road construction, $100 million of the surplus we applied for $400 million of infrastructure money from the federal government. We're going to do $500 million. This is the record. This is my record. $100 million of improvements going on right now, $500 million there. We're down to 17% of our bridges that are somewhat in jeopardy. We'll be down to 10% of those in 3 years. We're not going to abandon.
And Ms.
that
Kalis,
program.
what's your response?
Yeah, I mean, it's bad law, and he's going to tax or toll cars. And if he's not, I think that he needs to take down the gantries. He also, what I would like them to say, I know he should, because the reality is he will continue to need revenue. The reality is, I would say you're going to appeal it, something that was unconstitutional, on what basis? On what basis?
I'll
You want to
leave-
answer?
we'll leave that-
You're the governor.
Briefly, do you want to answer her?
I don't think either one of us is an attorney. I will base that on what the attorneys are telling us.
Do you
And
know
right
which
now-
clauses of the
right now,
Constitution it was?
Right now, we will
Yeah.
appeal. We are going to keep that program going because that infrastructure is
With all due
critical-
respect, you're the governor. If you're appealing it, you should know
critical-
on what basis you're appealing an unconstitutional law. That is not leadership.
All right, we'll move on to another.
Remember-
Ms. Kalis, when you left Florida in 2021, you were fighting with Monroe County about rental violations with your property and accusing officials there of having retaliatory motives against you. Within a year, here in Rhode Island, you were fighting with the Department of Health over your contract, accusing them of wrongdoing. Is it fair to say that this is a pattern, that you don't get along with people who don't give you your way?
No. What I would say is what is a pattern is I will fight for what is right every single time. I am not afraid to tell truth to power and to fight for the working people. That is what I did in Monroe County. I was fighting for working people. After a hurricane, county officials had the nerve to try to charge building permit fees on insurance money for hurricane victims, similar to him taxing PPP money for business owners. So I will fight to ensure that any measures from a government that are regressive and hurt working people will be stopped. And same
But
in
that
terms of-
wasn't what the fight with the officials was, or they accused you of violating
I
the
mean-
laws about short-term rentals, which is a big issue here.
Well, you
So
asked
why
about,
did you break?
So you asked about why I talked about retaliation. So within a week of me being very public and open with a house that was not available because it was really destroyed by a hurricane, all of a sudden that happened. And by the way, those officials knew that the house was not actually there because they inspected it, because that's what they do after a hurricane with FEMA. So they knew. The other thing is, so no, I would say that we need a leader, somebody that will fight for what is right, somebody that will stand up for things that they see are wrong, especially if the people that are being impacted do not come from a place of privilege and cannot
Mr.
always speak
McKee,
for
what do you
themselves.
see in her
So what I say,
interactions?
I'm glad you brought up the point, because the reason that Ms. Kalis came to the state of Rhode Island is because of money. And she...
I bailed you out.
And she...
From vaccinations.
Let him finish.
I think we were well on our way at that point in time.
You
trust
were in
me.
March, you hired me in April. It was the best decision you've made.
So the reason, and then Ms. Kalis paid herself more money in a week than an average Rhode Islander makes in a year. That is the truth. More money in a week than the average Rhode Islander makes in a year.
I employed
She came
over
with the
40
money.
Let's
and
talk
when the
Leobor
money
for a
dried
moment.
up,
Let's talk Leobor.
She
Shift the
registered to
topics.
vote, and she declared for governor.
Thank you, Mr. McKee.
Moving on to Leobor, for those unfamiliar, that is an acronym for the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. Starting with you, Ms. Kalis, should Leobor be repealed, reformed, or stay the same?
I think it can be reformed.
Any specifics?
I think being more inclusive in terms of who's on the hearing and how long an officer can be suspended for would be important. The other thing that I think is important is making sure that police chiefs be a little bit more open in their communication, because sometimes being silent is like being complicit, and I think we need to improve community relations in that way.
Mr. McKee?
I think you need to connect the community and the policing more, and the policing of the communities more. I've been very, very clear on that. And I think that, yeah, the makeup of the committee is restrictive as it is right now.
So reform?
As well as the number of days that are suspension. So it is open for reform, and I think you're going to get there this year.
Mr. McKee, the state has lacked a strategy for decades when it comes to the hospital landscape, with both Lifespan and Care New England facing financial questions. How should the state go about maintaining cost control and preserving quality care for patients?
Well, I think that that it's important that we continue to have good health care. That's why we invested hundreds of millions of dollars, not only in the workers, but also in the institutions themselves, to make sure that we got through the pandemic. Number one was make sure that they got through. This year, I put into the budget a line item that is assembling a group of people in the healthcare industry, along with people that are impacted by the healthcare, to help contain and lower the cost. So we have to kind of figure out a way to contain and lower the cost, and at the same time understand.
How would you do that?
Well, one thing we're doing right now, we've upped the reimbursement rates considerably, right? And that, so we have to make sure that we have the doctors here to do it. We did it for the dentists this year. We'll be doing it for other medical, professions, in the coming budget. So what you're going to do is you incentivize to make sure that we have good doctors, qualified doctors here, and incentivize them to be here, just like anything else. Pay does matter, and also you're going to make sure that we keep the health insurances honest relative to any level of increases, and that particular study that's going to go on, which I'm going to pay close attention to, make sure that we contain the cost, make sure that we invest in the physicians that actually provide the service, and make sure that we're talking to the hospital leadership themselves. And I believe that we should be having like a nonprofit that comes in there as well, which I think is very important to the workforce and is also to the longevity in the state of Rhode Island.
Ms. Kalis, your response to the same question.
As somebody that had to leave Rhode Island, my husband was a physician at Hasbro, Rhode Island Hospital, and chances are in the 90s or 2000s, if you had a skin cancer on your face or had a child with a cleft lip or palate, my husband's name was on your chart or could have been on your chart. And we have failed to pay physicians in a way where they can stay. We are ranked 50th in the country, or last in the country, for practicing medicine. So we need to change that. What I see from Dan McKee is the continuation of No Plan Dan. That is not a plan to get us out there. It is, because I will tell you there is not a substantive policy conversation. What we need to be able to do is we need to be able to deliver high-value, low-cost healthcare. The way that we do that is by increasing competition. So we can get rid of anti-competitive practices such as certificate of need laws, which basically regulate the ability to do healthcare like a utility, which it is not at this point. That'll encourage more competition. We do need to support physicians that are independent, because that is the basis of having a thriving medical community. So we can do those things. Also, if we make it easier to practice medicine in the state by offering compact licensing, that would be another way to encourage nurses and providers to come here. If it's easier to start a practice here, and then if you can make it here. I know what it's like to not be able to make it here as a provider, wanting to provide for the most vulnerable members of the community. We could not do it as an independent practitioner. We did it somewhere else, and then we came back, but it's the same problem and the same career politicians that do not have a plan and do not deliver results.
Thank you, Ms. Kalis. Brief response, Mr. McKee.
I gave my answer. We're going to work our way through it. And by the way, in terms of a plan, please go to ri2030.com. That was hundreds of hours of time with the highest level of professionals, both inside and outside the state, talking about health care, talking about infrastructure, talking about transportation, talking about education. And we're going to lay it, that's going to be the roadmap for the state of Rhode Island. It was the roadmap for the budget that I passed this year. It'll be the roadmap for the budget I passed in this next session as well.
It is now time for closing statements from our candidates. Let's start with Ashley Kalis. You have 90 seconds.
Tonight, you heard two very stark contrasts for the future of Rhode Island. Dan McKee represents the failed policies of the past: corruption, insider deals, abuse of power, and incompetence. It is time to turn the page and look to the future. Food prices are soaring, electric and gas bills are through the roof, and the dream of owning a home is out of reach for many. Rhode Island must now choose a path. Do we continue with our constant excuses, or do we fix our problems? Do we harp upon our failures, or do we build upon our strengths? Do we continue old partisan battles, or do we band together for all of Rhode Island? We have a once-in-a-life opportunity to change course. And if we have the political will, this will be a time of unparalleled opportunity for Rhode Island. We are running a campaign of vision and substance, a competition of ideas and policies, and this is the time right now to write the greatest chapter in Rhode Island's history. My administration will reform our broken education system to ensure that no child is trapped in a failing school. I will lower the income and sales tax because I believe that you best know how to spend your money. I will grow the economy so that we can ensure that everyone has access to high-paying careers. I will use public money for public projects, not corporate welfare like soccer stadiums. And I will build 80,000 housing units to combat soaring rents. And I will roll back the 47% electric rate hike because no Rhode Islander should be stuck footing the bill for the current governor's inaction. We can and must do better as a state. I'm Ashley Kalis, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you, Ms. Kalis. Okay, hang on, please. 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 Mr. McKee, you have 90 seconds.
Control the way that the tickets were distributed tonight? I don't think so.
It's called political support.
I would like to thank the Providence Journal.
You guys, let's him finish.
Please stop.
Come on.
Please show some respect.
All right, Governor, please.
I'd like to thank the Providence Journal and Public Radio for hosting the debate tonight. I'd like to thank Rhode Island College as well. My wife Susan and I grew up in Cumberland. We went to public schools together. My wife is a teacher. Our kids went to public schools. We started a business after college. I had a career well before I was in government. Started a business, raised our family, volunteered in the Boys and Girls Club, president of the club, started the endowment fund, invested in our communities. Having served as your governor in the last year, coming in on the state of emergency like the state has never seen before, we've delivered on day one. We're the best vaccinated state in the country. We were one of the highest death rates in the country when I became governor. We made that a priority. We raised the unemployment lowest in the country, lowest in the state's history. Rhode Island has momentum, and we're not going to give it up. I want to thank those who supported us during the pandemic. I want to thank the voters who have voted for me in the past. I ask them to help us keep this momentum going like the state has never seen before on November 8th and prior to November 8th by voting.
Thank you, Mr. McKee. That's time. I'd like to thank the candidates, Governor Dan McKee and Republican challenger Ashley Kalis. Thank you to the panel, Patrick Anderson and Raymond Bakari. Thank you to our audience. Now please applaud your candidates. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to our 2022 gubernatorial candidate forum sponsored by the Public Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. We'll be back shortly with the three other candidates on the ballot for governor: Independents Zach Hurwitz, Paul Rihanna, and Libertarian Elijah Gizzarelli. Thank you, Governor.
He's going that way.
Thank you, Ashley. Good to see you. That was fine. Okay, that's fine.
I got a little nervous. I was like, I feel like Oh, we're going back to back. Okay. All right, well, I might as well.
Now, go. Welcome back to a candidate forum in the race for governor of Rhode Island, co-sponsored by the Public Radio, the Providence. No. Soon. Sorry about that. We'll get started briefly soon. Three minutes. Yep, about 2.5 minutes out.
This thing on?
Maybe.
Yo. Yeah, it's on.
Cool.
I want to thank McKee and Callis for letting us debate with them. We appreciate it. That was actually sarcasm, by the way. You know. McKee's only been running for me for like a year, so what's another one? I didn't hear what he said. Right there.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Appreciate it.
Welcome back to a candidate forum in the race for governor of Rhode Island, co-sponsored by the Public's Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. We're coming to you before a live audience here at Rhode Island College. We just heard from the Democratic and Republican candidates, but there are 3 others on the ballot also. In this portion of the event, we'll be in conversation with independents Zach Hurwitz and Paul Rihanna and Libertarian Elijah Gizzarelli. I'm Ian Donis, political reporter for the Public's Radio. I'll be joined in asking questions by Providence Journal State House reporter and student journalist at Rhode Island College, Raymond Bakari. Let's start with Zach Hurwitz. You folks are trailing in the polls a little bit. What is your chief goal in running for governor? What do you hope to accomplish?
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for having me here, even though it's, a little bit past my bedtime. But overall, I want to improve Rhode Island and quality of life for as many Rhode Islanders as I can. This is a beautiful state. This is a very developed state, and we should be doing everything we can to make this just a better place to live, to make this place more inviting, and just overall make Rhode Island great, because it truly is an amazing place.
Elijah Gizzarelli, what is your overriding ambition for what you hope to accomplish with your run for governor?
I hope to win. I mean, look, I have no delusions about my chances in this race, right? I'm going up against Republicans and Democrats, and they get to make the rules. The table's tilted, right? And I've been a libertarian for 12 years. I've been working nationally in Joe Jorgensen's campaign, Adam Kokesh's campaign, several other campaigns. I know this isn't new, right? Just like as we see right now on the stage, that we're not getting a fair shake. And I appreciate you guys inviting us to the debate, as Channel 12 didn't, right? So that deserves a pat on the back, but it's still not right. Here's the thing. People are worried about wasting their vote on a third party. Rhode Island is run by Democrats. 20,000 people showed up to the Republican primary. 110,000 people showed up to the Democratic primary. Callis isn't going to win. It's a wasted vote, right? What we can do in this election is get a third party recognized. The Libertarian Party is the third largest party in the nation. If we receive 5% of the vote, we will be recognized as a party. Right now, we are being forced by Democrats and Republicans to operate as a political pack. It ties our hands, and then we have to deal with things like this. So that's my goal.
Thank you. Paul Rihanna, what is your goal for your campaign? What do you most want to accomplish?
Well, like everyone up here, our goal is to win. But, you know, the media's been holding us back. We don't get equal coverage. We're shut out of debates, shut out of RIC interviews and forums. My goal is to represent Rhode Islanders, all Rhode Islanders, from South Providence to South County. I've never shied away from anything, as everyone knows on this stage and in the crowd. I fought for Rhode Islanders' freedoms tooth and nail, even risked my own job to fight for Rhode Islanders. I think all three of us deserve a spot on the stage with Callis and McKee. We are not second-class citizens.
Thank you.
You heard what the governor said about truck tolls and why he's appealing the lawsuit onto you guys. Mr. Gizzarelli, starting with you, would you get rid of the truck tolls? Would you appeal them?
It's get rid of the truck tolls or force everybody to pay tolls to use Rhode Island roads. Get rid of the truck tolls.
And where would you come up with the money to plug that gap?
I mean, look, you want to talk about the budget, good luck finding it on Google, right? Good luck. They keep that very well hidden in this state. Transparency will be a #1 thing of my governorship. Anyway, we're spending money like crazy in different places. I would stop paying McKee's friends, and I'd use that money to fill those holes.
Mr. Rihanna, what do you think about truck tolls?
Well, at the beginning of my campaign, I spoke out against truck tolls. And for the second part of you asking me what I would do to replace that money, well, first off, you know, what I would do is actually look at the budget, because the problem with Rhode Island is we don't have transparency. We have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. That's the problem we have in Rhode Island, a spending problem.
Mr. Hurwitz?
Well, yeah, first off, a judge ruled them as unconstitutional, and at the end of the day, we're putting millions of dollars trying to appeal the actual ruling, which is, you know, quite the opposite of what the truck tolls were meant to do. So at the end of the day, I'd work with unions to figure out a way where we can get rid of them, and especially, you know, truck unions, because at the end, they're unconstitutional. There's nothing much more to say than that.
And how would you pay for it?
Oh, well, going off of my opponents, I mean, we spend money we spend money insane amount, and at the end of the day, we're putting money trying to defend it. I mean, maybe we can, you know, use the money that we're trying to do to appeal the actual, you know, ruling. Maybe we can actually put that toward infrastructure.
Mr. Hurwitz, what qualifies you to be governor?
I mean, that's a good question. The one thing that really qualifies me is that I care about Rhode Island. I care about each and every single one of its citizens. I am a Rhode Islander myself. My family's been here for generations, and I care about this state so much. I don't need political experience to run. I mean, a lot of people who ran, especially on the Democratic primary, didn't have political experience. So I don't see that me not having any experience in government disqualifies me from running.
Mr. Gizzarelli?
I mean, I have common sense, which we haven't seen a lot in Rhode Island politics. Outside of that, I've been a political activist for 12 years. I've traveled the country. I've worked on presidential campaigns. I was Joe Jorgensen's regional field director for the Mid-Atlantic region, which I believe is the most popular region that we had on the campaign. And guys, I'm not a corrupt insider, right? I didn't make money off of a sweetheart government contract and then spend that to buy a position as governor. And I didn't give her that money,
Mr. Ryan?
What makes me qualified to run for governor is actually I care for the people, and I prove that. I shown how much I cared for the healthcare workers and every individual Rhode Islander. I grew up in South Providence, so I know what it's like to grow up in the urban area. And let me tell you, the urban area is forgotten by the state of Rhode Island. The bus thing that's happening in RIPTA has been happening since 2002. All of a sudden, it's an issue. I used to have to take a bus to go to school at Hope High and have to go from Eddy Street to Broad Street, and then pray to God I caught bus 42. This has been an ongoing problem with RIPTA. It's not a leadership problem, it's a RIPTA problem and a union problem. That's the problems.
Thank you. We have some community questions, starting with one from Jim McCabe.
Hello, I'm Jim McCabe from Charlestown. Thank you for taking my question. Research shows COVID put a huge dent in the education of our youth. From Charlestown. How would you support our primary and secondary school students to help them overcome this gap? Research shows COVID put a huge dent in the education of our youth. How would you support our primary and secondary school students to help them overcome this gap?
Well, as we all know,
or do you expect them to catch up naturally?
basically ruined the education system. They were doing distant learning, which wasn't working. People were basically suffering, mainly students from Providence. The best way to do it is by action. We have to get out there and find programs for these students, not distance learning, not after-school programs. We have to help these students work through their problems.
Thank you, Mr. Ghisarelli. Your plan for compensating for COVID learning loss.
COVID did not cause this problem. The government's reaction to COVID caused this problem, okay? And as far as how to fix the problem, it's pretty easy, right? In Rhode Island, we spend over $20,000 per student per year. And that's not a real average, right? Because we're averaging kindergartners with high schoolers, right? $20,000 per student per year. Let's say that the average classroom size is 20, just so it makes the math easy. Every teacher in Rhode Island would love for their classroom to only have 20 students. If we gave each teacher $400,000 to educate 20 students a year, we would have the best, most robust education system in this country. Where is the rest of the money going? Teachers make $70,000. If you add up all their benefits, was that $130,000 at most? We have over $250 million unaccounted for. It's not going to the building. It's a government building. They're not paying taxes on building. It's a government building. How many janitors do you need? How many administrators per classroom? Not one. Maybe one administrator and one janitor per 10 classrooms. If you do basic math and apply common sense, the problem fixes itself.
Thank you. Mr. Hurwitz?
Well, I actually went through distance learning, through COVID learning in high school, and I can say it does not work. McKee has failed the school system as we know it, especially when it comes to K through 12. The actual proficiency has dropped. The RIC scores were released. It's 33% proficiency in ELA and 20% in math. It's a horrible thing, and we need to improve upon that. We need to help teachers teach better. We need to have mental health resources so that they can teach students to the best of their abilities. We need mental health resources for students so they can learn to the best of their abilities, because at the end of the day, that's what it's really about. That's how we can take care of our students and our teachers.
Let's go to another community question. This one is from Tina Peterson.
Hello, my name is Tina Pedersen, and I would like to know how you're going to help small businesses become ADA compliant so they're accessible to all individuals in Rhode Island. Small businesses become ADA compliant so they're accessible to all.
And we'll start off with Mr. Hurwitz.
Well, first off, I mean, 90% of businesses in Rhode Island are small businesses, and that's just an extremely big portion of it. I would definitely work with each and every single one of them individually to see if what we can put in place to make sure that they're ADA compliant.
Mr. Ghisarelli?
We talk about the cost of living in this state being way too high, and then we ask questions like this. Listen, I have disabled friends. I hope that they can always find a place in order to shop and to interact with the community, but it's not something that the government should be doing. If you are a business owner and you want more customers, be ABA compliant. If you are not and you choose that, we're not going to put restrictions on your business that's going to force you out of business because you can't build a ramp, okay? It's going to destroy the economy to push these people any further than they've already been pushed by the COVID lockdowns.
Mr. Rihanna.
Well, I would speak to every small businesses and find out what they need, how to go about helping them, because like Zachary Hurwitz said, 90% of businesses around are small businesses. And we have to find out how to help them, how to make them strive. Walmart had to shut down. No, Walmart didn't have to shut down during COVID. Target didn't have to shut down during COVID, but all the small businesses had to shut down during COVID, which made them take a major hit. And that is sad that certain businesses could stay open, but small businesses couldn't.
Mr. Rihanna, what would your approach be to improving public education in Rhode Island? It seems like the state's been spinning its wheels for a long time. Every now and then a new report comes out talking about how bad things are. What would you do differently?
Well, with public education, what's really wrong here? There's so much more than just education in the classroom. There's things going on at home, lack of resources within the school department. So we really have to look at the bigger picture. It's just not within the public schools. It's things that are going on at home. There's more than one solution to fixing the public school department.
If a lot of those issues are based at home, what is the role of the state in addressing that? Is there a role for the state?
There actually is. There's parents from the urban area who lack resources, from daycare to getting their child to school on time. Someone working 7 to 3 and a bus comes at 8 o'clock, it's hard to get your students to that bus. So we have to find ways to make it easier for the parents, which will make it less stressful for the child.
Thank you, Mr. Gizzarelli.
If you've watched any of my interviews or you ever hear me talk, I talk about education a lot. Education is one of my most important topics. And I will give credit where credit's due. My opponent, Ms. Callis, she's good on school choice, right? We've seen Arizona just passed a landmark legislation with a voucher system. There are thousands and thousands of people being able to move their school district. And here's the thing, a lot of people don't realize this, but 88% of black students go to historically black schools. That means that even though we think of segregation happening 70 years ago, 60 years ago, our school system in America is still 88% segregated, right? It's unacceptable. There are plenty of students that are in these poor areas that would like to leave. And the way our laws are written, we are forcing them into these horrible institutions. We need to stop funding institutions and start funding students.
Thank you. Mr. Hurwitz?
Well, I myself actually used school choice to go to a school where I felt more comfortable. I mean, why shouldn't anyone else from any part of Rhode Island not actually use those tools and use the same tools that I did? I mean, I feel grateful. I think everyone else should use the same ideology that I have, that my original school wasn't good enough, wasn't the best fit for me, so I chose to go to a different school. I think that every single student in Rhode Island should have that ability. And on top of that, what the Rhode Island government can do to help students learn more is just provide them support. They do not have the correct support, especially when it comes to mental health, when it comes to the COVID delay. Anything that we can do to help them get back on their feet and get back to being good, prosperous students is something that I'm willing to go for.
Thank you.
COVID's come up a couple times already, but it's still with us, and there could be a new pandemic on the way. We never know. If that does happen, if there is another really bad outbreak, what will you do to keep Rhode Islanders safe? Or is it everyone for themselves? And we'll start with Mr. Gizzarelli on this one.
Everyone for themselves. No, guys, come on, we're a community, right? And I thought a bunch of businesses did a great job by putting aside hours so elderly residents would be able to do their shopping and still stay socially distanced. Just because we don't believe that the government should do something about something doesn't mean that the community shouldn't do something about something. Everybody should make their own risk assessment and act accordingly. That means that if you have a business and you think it's better to shut down, shut down. If you don't think it, if you want to open your business and people want to come to your business, it is not the government's place to say no.
Mr. Rihanna, what would you do differently from the government?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What would you do in the next pandemic differently from how it was handled?
Well, the first thing I would do is no mandates. The second thing I would do is not kill a healthcare system. I would not abandon our elderly in nursing homes. I would not abandon mental health patients in hospitals. We need staff. We had a staffing issue before the pandemic, and now we have a major staffing issue. I just got my job back at Fatima Hospital as a mental health worker, unvaccinated, I might add. And at the end of the day, there's still a staffing shortage. There's still people suffering in the mental health industry, and they're not getting the proper care and treatment they deserve. So one thing I would not do is mess with the healthcare system.
And Mr. Hurwitz, how about you? What would you do differently?
Well, one thing I think Paul has definitely experienced during the COVID pandemic is the burden that COVID had on hospitals, on ERs. By investing more into community centers and even telemedicine, we're able to decrease the burden that is currently on hospitals, that was on hospitals during the peak of the pandemic. So when another pandemic comes and rolls around, we'll be able to fight through it and help our healthcare industry even more and hopefully lay the burden off of hospitals because they really did take a beating during the last pandemic.
It's time, I think, time for our closing statements from our candidates. Let's start with Mr. Hurwitz. You have 60 seconds.
Rhode Islanders are tired and fed up of our current government. Career politicians, millionaires, and power-hungry people have done nothing but bleed this state dry. I am not a career politician. I don't have endless amounts of cash. I have $3 in my wallet right now. I could care less about the power that comes with being a gubernatorial leader of Rhode Island. I am you. I'm you, the person watching. I am an average person fighting for my future, your family's future, and Rhode Island itself. I've got your back, and I hope you have mine come November 8th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Rihanna.
Well, we all know what we've been through this past year as far as the state shutting down, killing the healthcare system, and basically all of our lives ruined due to Governor Dan McKay and his tyrannical mandates. We have a tyrant running, and we have someone who claims to be a fighter. My question is, if they're really a fighter, why didn't they speak up against COVID mandates when they were making millions of dollars? That's my question. Also, if Governor Dan McKay actually cared about the people of Rhode Island, why didn't he help the healthcare industry instead of ruining it? Making people lose their livelihoods, people not being able to feed their families, and almost losing their homes because he made people lose their jobs. I'm asking for your vote November 8th. Thank you, and I appreciate you all.
Thank you. Mr. Guzzarelli.
You know, I heard Rhode Island needs a fighter, and I'm the only veteran in the race.
We appreciate your service.
Thank you so much.
But seriously, though, I didn't get to talk about the drug war, so I'm just going to do that now. Guys, Rhode Islanders spend over $70,000 a year per inmate to keep people in prison, right? We have people right now at the ACI that have never harmed anybody ever, and Rhode Islanders are paying for them to stay there. We are taking them out of their homes. We're taking them away from their mothers and fathers. We are taking them away from their sons and daughters, right? And then their families are getting on welfare, so more taxpayer dollars are going to it. We're over $70,000 per inmate. The average Rhode Islander makes $35,000 a year. How on earth is it twice as expensive to be an inmate in Rhode Island than it is to live the average lifestyle? That's insane.
Time, Mr. Guzzarelli.
The drug war must end.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this forum. This has been a production of the Public's Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. Our technical director is Jonathan Rosa. Engineers are Aaron Reed and Michael Kane. Our stage director is Nate Halda. Our community producers are Will Richmond and Maddie Mott. Our co-executive producers are Sally Isley, Whitman Littlefield, Aaron Dion, and David Eng. For Patrick Anderson and Raymond Bakari, I'm Ian Donis, and let's give a hand to Zach Hurwitz, Elijah Ghisarelli, and Paul Rihanna.
Good job, bro. Great. How do you think it went? It's hard to.